Hi, everybody. Brad Truex here again from Eastman Woodlands and Wildlife Committee. Today, we're going to talk about weasels and fishers. Mustelids are the weasel family, and there are multiple different mammals within this family. We have weasels, minks, martens, fishers, badgers, otters, wolverines, polecats, stoats, ferrets, striped skunks. It's just showing them pictorially. But today we're going to confine our talk to weasels and fishers. The weasels that we have in North America are the long-tailed weasel, the short-tailed weasel, and the least weasel. Here in New Hampshire, we only have the long-tailed weasel and the short-tailed weasel. And although members of the weasel family vary in size and color, what they have in common are long, slender bodies, very short legs, rounded ears, and scent glands. Weasels, like all mustelids, produce a pungent odor from their anal glands. Their coat is brown with reddish and yellow tinges and a black tail tip. The belly of the short-tailed weasel is white, whereas that of the long-tailed weasel is either white or a yellowish color. In the winter, all weasels have completely white coats, except for the tip of their tail, which remains black. Weasels may hunt during the day, but they're more often out hunting at night. And weasels are very skilled hunters, climbers, swimmers, and runners. Their long, slender bodies allow them to raid underground burrows. They follow rodents into very small spaces, and they can wrap themselves around larger prey like rabbits to hold them still. The long-tailed weasel weighs about a pound. Its tail makes up about half of its body length, and the males are bigger than the females. On the other hand, the short-tailed weasel, also known as the ermine or the stoat, weighs only about 9 ounces on average. That's the male, and the female only weighs about 6 ounces. And the tail of the short-tailed weasel is shorter than its body. This is the long-tailed weasel. It's the largest of the three weasels in North America. And again, the males are up to 18 inches long, including a tail, which is about half as long as their body, and they can weigh up to about a pound. The females are about 4 inches shorter and about half as heavy. The short-tailed weasel is also known as the ermine or the stoat, and the males here are 7 to 12 inches, and their tail is only 2 to 5 inches, and they weigh about 9 ounces altogether. You will note that the tail, the tip of the tail, which is black, tends to be more kind of spike-like in the short-tailed weasel than it is in the long-tailed weasel. And the females, again, are about 25% shorter and weigh about half as much. In the winter, their coats are white. All weasels have a white coat in winter, except that the tip of their tail remains black. The white coat makes them much harder to be seen by any predators, but it also hides them from their own prey, makes it easier for them to capture unsuspecting prey in the winter snow. And the ermine is really the short-tailed weasel, although fur traders use the term also for the long-tailed weasel as well. Weasels may burrow into the ground, but they also nest in fallen logs, under rocks, or in brush piles. And not uncommonly, they'll hijack the burrow of another animal. In fact, short-tailed weasels almost never burrow holes themselves. They almost always simply use the burrows that another animal has already dug. Weasels are often seen resting at the entrance of their burrow with only their head showing, and they often line their nests with the fur and the skin of the rodents that they have killed. The weasel habitat, they often prefer open grassy areas near water. And the long-tailed weasels frequently swim in streams and along the edges of ponds so they can hunt ducks and other animals. They're very solitary and extremely territorial. If one weasel wanders into the territory of another weasel, they end up in a fight. The average home range for a long-tailed weasel is about 30 to 35 acres, but a male might travel as much as 3 miles a night while hunting. And long-tailed weasels tend to make circuits or rounds of their home range roughly every 7 to 12 days. Uh, Importantly, when young weasels move off to find their own territory, the first thing they look for is water. Long-tailed weasels breed between June and August, and they have what we call delayed implantation, which means that they don't bear their young until the next spring. So again, the long-tailed weasel typically bears 4 to 5 young on the average in April or May of the following year. And the female raises the young on her own. Male is nowhere to be found. The offspring are completely independent by about 4 months. The short-tailed weasel also tends to breed in late spring or early summer. And once again, the offspring are not born until the following spring. The average litter size for the short-tailed weasel is 6 to 7 kits, but as many as 15 kits have been seen. The offspring tend to be multi-paternal, meaning that they have multiple different fathers. And again, the males play no role in raising the young. And the kits are able to hunt on their own by about week 8. So what do weasels eat? Weasels are carnivores, and we consider them general predators. They eat mostly small rodents, mice, voles, shrews, but they can also eat larger animals. They can catch and eat chipmunks, squirrels, snowshoe hares, and rabbits, grouse, ducks, snakes, frogs, and other things. And if there's regular prey is unavailable, they may eat eggs, berries, or even insects. They are one of the rare mammals that will attack prey that's much larger than themselves. They aim with their very sharp teeth at the neck or the skull of the prey that they're following. And a weasel can use its long body like a snake to wrap itself around a chipmunk or a hare that's wider than its own body. The long-tailed weasel's name is Mustela prenata. The Mustela means one who carries off mice, and that's because the prey most often seen with weasels, in fact, are mice. Their very hyperactivity and consequent high metabolic rate requires that they eat about 30 to 40% of their body weight on a daily basis. And they often cache unconsumed prey and return to it later. Weasels have sometimes been referred to as crazed killers, and that's because if they happen to raid a chicken coop, they may kill all the chickens within that coop. So farmers often use metal cloth that extends 6 to 8 inches below the ground in order to protect their chickens from weasels. Weasels hunting, we're going to show you a video here. They're very ferocious hunters. They're very quick and agile. And watch this video of the weasels and minks doing some hunting. There you see the weasels moving around. There's a mouse going into a burrow, and who's going to follow them? This looks like a long-tailed weasel. Here he captured a squirrel. There he goes. He's capturing something pretty big, probably a rabbit. There he is again, capturing something bigger than himself. There he's carrying off a rabbit. Once again, going after a sizable prey, something bigger than themselves. This happens to be a mink, which again is a relative of the weasel, and minks are able to do hunting very much like the weasel. Weasels, again, are one of the rare mammals that can actually prey upon animals that are significantly bigger than themselves. And this shows a short-tailed weasel, also known as a stoat or ermine, that took down this much larger rabbit. Since weasels are primarily nocturnal, you'll be pretty lucky to see one. So we often have to rely on sign and some of the clues that they leave. And those clues are usually tracks and scat. So again, their long body and their short legs lead to a very distinctive running gait. It's called a bounding gait. And at every bound, their long body loops upward, reminding one almost of an inchworm moving. And the hind feet register almost, if not exactly, in the front foot impressions. The right foot sometimes lags slightly behind. And the stride distance is normally about 10 inches. This is, we talk about basic gait patterns. The bounding gait is the one that's characteristic of the weasel. And let's watch a video. They have this distinctive bounding gait. They're very quick and agile. And let's watch this one. So here is a long-tailed weasel running. Once again, it's bounding. He goes very rapidly. Okay, the weasels, when looking at their tracks, they have 5 toes on both the front and the hind feet, and the claws usually show in any prints that they leave. But once again, the track pattern depends on whether the weasel was running or simply walking. And interestingly, weasels can reverse their hind feet 180 degrees so they can actually climb down trees head first. We've talked about this unique kind of ankle in several other animals. Not only the weasels can reverse their hind feet and go head first down trees, but raccoons can do it, squirrels can also do it, and the fisher can also do it. So once again, the weasels have 5 toes on each of their front and their rear paws. They have this kind of a U-shaped indentation from the foot pad, the heel pad, and the straddle, which is the distance between their 2 paws, is only about 2.5 inches. So again, the weasels have a bounding gait when they're running. So the tracks that they'd leave in the snow almost look like rabbit tracks. So you can picture this weasel bounding along. And if you didn't pay much attention to the actual prints themselves, you would think that they were probably left by a rabbit. Weasel scat is something else that we can look for to determine whether we had any weasels around. And weasel scat is small. It's got twisted ends like this. It often contains bones or fur, since what they're eating is mainly small rodents or rabbits and hares. And the location is a big clue. I'll talk about that in a minute. But they also often scat in latrines, basically places where other weasels have scat. One weasel didn't leave all this scat, that was left there by multiple weasels. But again, one highly characteristic feature of the weasel family is that they like to leave their scat on elevated surfaces, like tree trunks or rocks. And this weasel here is actually leaving scat on a large diameter moss covered log. And if you look closely, there are several other weasel scats on that particular log. So again, that's highly characteristic of weasels, is leaving their scat on these elevated surfaces. Weasels do have certain predators. They could be preyed upon by fox, mink, coyote, bobcats, hawks, and owls, but it's usually the young that are preyed upon. It's pretty rare for an adult weasel to be preyed upon by anybody. The fact that their coat turns white in winter actually helps hide them from predators. And the only thing that doesn't turn white in winter is the black tip of their tail. And one theory is that that black tip of the tail entices predators to strike at it, causing them to miss, and then the weasel's able to escape so they can hunt another day. Weasels often ward off predators by secreting the contents of their anal glands, which give rise to a very strong, musky odor that's produced by several sulfuric compounds. So weasel fun fact is that unlike most mammals, they have excellent color vision. Now, we don't know what that means from a teleological standpoint, but it probably means that they are better able to see some of their prey. Okay, to summarize the profile of the weasel, they're small, fast, agile, they're very hyperactive, and they're ferocious hunters. Fishers are also members of the weasel family. This is showing a fisher in the snow. Here's one that's in the snow here at Eastman. Fishers, again, are members of the weasel family, and they're often called fisher cats here in New Hampshire, but that's really a misnomer because they have absolutely no relation to cats and they're not felines at all. Males average 8 to 16 pounds, and females 4 to 6 pounds. So they're considerably larger than the weasels that we've been talking about. Their nose to tail length is 2 to 3 feet. They have long, slender bodies and dark fur, and the fur becomes denser and glossier in winter, though it remains black. They have strong retractable claws for climbing, and they have a long, bushy black tapered tail. Their relatively big feet help them actually move well on the snowpacks. And their hind paws, again, much like the weasel or the raccoon or the squirrel, can rotate almost 180 degrees. So they're actually able to climb down trees head first. They also have glands in the bottom of their paws that give off a distinct odor, and that's often important when it comes to mating behavior. Fishes, again, are good climbers. They have sharp claws, they can climb trees, but they like to spend most of their time on the forest floor. This is showing a fisher climbing a tree right here at Eastman. This was captured on a game cam, and here he or she is climbing up at what looks to me like most likely a bird feeder. Fishers basically are a northern species. They're primarily found in northern latitudes where there are boreal or mixed deciduous coniferous forests. So they're found mostly in New England, in Canada, in the Pacific Northwest, and Alaska. Fishers are usually solitary animals. Their range might be 10 to 20 square miles, but again, they may have to travel as much as 60 miles in search of food. They do like to travel on ridges. And I'll show you a couple pictures in a minute. Fishers scent mark with both their urine and their anal gland secretions, and by rolling around and mauling conifer saplings. I mentioned before, the glands in their paws give off a distinctive odor that may attract mates. So very important for breeding purposes. And fishers are active year-round. Again, they're primarily nocturnal or crepuscular. Again, crepuscular means that they're active at dusk and dawn. And though they're historically linked to boreal and mixed forest habitats, they've been seen increasingly in some suburban areas. This is a fisher out at night, seen on a game cam here at Eastman. Again, once again, because they're nocturnal, you're much more likely to see a fisher on a game cam than you are out in open spaces. So where do fishers live? Their preferred habitat is the mixed forest that has a heavy canopy cover. Now, that's much different if you remember when we just talked about the weasels. The weasels like to be in open fields near water, and they are not particularly forest animals, whereas the fishers basically are forest animals. So they tend to avoid traveling in large open spaces. Their breeding dens are usually in cavities of large diameter trees or snags. Remember, snags are basically dead standing trees out in the forest. And in winter, they use these tree cavities, but they're more likely to take shelter at ground level. For instance, under a hollow log, in a space under rocks, near roots or a brush pile. And they do tend to leave scat near the mouth of these dens, never quite as much scat as we would see with the porcupine den. The ground level dens in the winter are easiest to find in deep snow. And these snow dens consist of tunnels that may lead to an intranivian or subnivian chamber. Intranivian means within the snow, subnivian means under the snow, or to a ground level shelter, such as a hollow log or a rock pile under the snow. I'm going to show you a video of a fisher, and it points out several things that I'd like you to notice. First of all, they like to travel on ridges or stone walls. You'll notice the bounding gait. You'll notice they're very curious animals, and you'll notice them scenting several times. And again, at the end, you'll see them going off into the woods after they've been out briefly in the open area. So this video is taken in a New England yard, and you see the bounding gait after he traveled up on that rock ledge. There he's coming around. He or she is very curious. Gonna look here. Looks like he's going under an overturned boat here. Gonna go inside, look around, then come back out. Still looking around. Now you're going to see him bounding, sniffing and smelling. Okay, now he's headed back to the woods where he wants to be. And before he gets in the woods, he's going to stop and scent. Here's a video of a fisher in the snow. Again, notice that the big paws that the fisher has makes it easy to walk on snow, but he still has a bounding gait, very curious, and we'll see some more scenting behavior. This is actually taken up in Ontario, near North Bay, Ontario. And this fisher there again, walking on the snow. Those big paws are really easy, make it easy to walk. Here he's sniffing at some scent and probably going to leave some scent of his or her own. This is good for mating purposes. There he's sniffing. Now he's going to turn around and leave some of his own scent. Right there. And once again, very curious, going off and having a good time in the snow. Fishers, again, tend to mate in late spring. The females give birth to a litter the following year. Again, this is characteristic of a number of mammals. They breed, they have their mating session, but then the blastocyte does not get implanted until late. And typically, almost a whole year goes by before the kits are actually born. So the birth is usually occurs in a tree cavity that's well above the ground, and the females take care of them until late summer when they go off on their own. Once again, the female is all that takes care of the kits. The male is nowhere to be found. And estrus occurs shortly after the female delivers, and she leaves the den to seek another mate back then. Okay, once again, the blastocyte's not implanted until spring, so that's why they have such a long reproductive cycle. And fishers are usually solitary and they don't have any lasting relationships. Fishers are very quiet animals. They've often been accused of being the source of that blood-curdling scream that you may sometimes hear at night. But in fact, that's a false attribution. That scream is actually made by foxes, not made by fishers. They do have some vocalizations, such as a low chuckle, a growl, a hiss, a snarl, a grunt, or a crooning-like sound, but they don't make that scream that is misattributed to them rather than to the foxes who actually make the scream. So what do fishers eat? They're omnivores, but particularly carnivorous. Their main prey, again, are snowshoe hares, porcupines, small mammals, again, the mice, the voles, the shrews, the moles, and squirrels. And occasionally they would feed on birds or amphibians, insects, nuts, fruits, mushrooms, eggs, or carrion that they happen to find. They are one of the few predators of the porcupine. We'll talk about that in a minute. Though we often blame fishers for cats that go missing here in New Hampshire, a study was done here in New Hampshire of trap fishers, and they found cat hairs in the stomachs of only 1 in 1,000 fishers. So in fact, house cats are not frequent prey of fishers. And fishers have been known to kill larger animals. And by larger animals, I'm talking about things that are much larger, and things like raccoons, otters, bobcats, and even Canada lynx. So again, something that's several times the size of the fisher. So they're very ferocious hunters. Again, fishers are one of the few predators of the porcupine. This is actually a painting showing a fisher down here. There's the porcupine up in the tree. And as a result of this, porcupine and fisher populations are usually inversely related. And that, in fact, may have some ecological importance. If you all of a sudden had a relative paucity of fishers, it would lead to an overpopulation of porcupines. And then in turn, the porcupines might overbrowse any new growth in the forest, and they chew bark away, which harms the trees and could lead to a decline in the forest health over time. So as a result, the fisher and porcupine populations tend to be inversely related. The fishers do have a few predators, mostly young fishers, because the adult fishers are seldom predated. Bobcats, again, may prey on the young fishers and rarely prey on the adult fishers. But more importantly, bobcats compete with fishers for food. So as a result, we've seen some declining population of fishers here in New Hampshire in recent years, as we've seen an increase in the bobcat population. And other states like Minnesota have also noted this inverse relationship between bobcat fisher populations. There are other threats to the fisher. They can get canine distemper, and fishers can actually die from exposure to rodenticides, not directly, but probably from eating mice that had actually eaten those rat poisons. So again, fishers are primarily nocturnal or crepuscular, and that means you're more likely to see them on a game cam than out in the open. So once again, we have to rely on sign and the clues that they leave. And once again, that those clues are their tracks and their scat. This is showing the fisher tracks. Once again, they have each foot has 5 digits, and they have this C-shaped paw. This looks very much like what we showed you under weasel footprints. And the heel pad sometimes has an impression at the back, and claw marks are usually visible. But the tracks of the fisher are about twice the size of the weasel or the mink. So again, here are fisher tracks here, weasel and mink tracks down here. This happens to be otter tracks, which are another member of the overall mustelid family, but they look considerably different. And again, the tracks of the fisher are roughly about 2 inches. And again, this is showing some fisher tracks in the snow. Some fisher track patterns. They often have what's called a 2x2 lope pattern, which is characteristic of members of the weasel family. This is showing it very nicely. And the pattern that we see depends on the type of activity the fisher is engaged in. Here's a fisher with the bounding gait, and what sort of track pattern would you expect to see here? Well, it would look like this. It might almost resemble snowshoe hare tracks. I highly recommend that you go to the National Park Service website from Marsh Billings National Park. Ed Sheeran is a ranger and a wildlife tracking specialist with the National Park Service, and he has a tremendous video that highlights things that the fisher does. And here in his study, he shows the fisher tracks. And one nice thing about tracking is that you can often not only tell that an animal was there, but can actually visualize what the animal was doing. So here you see fisher tracks going up to some water. So again, right here, the fisher probably stopped, drank some water, and then wandered off here. Another part of the same video that Ed Sheeran does shows some larger tracks left by a male fisher and some smaller tracks left by a female fisher. And then he put together what was actually probably happening here. The female fisher probably wandered back and stopped right about here. She was probably sniffing at the scent left by a larger male. Here, Ed has superimposed an image of the fisher to show what he thought this fisher was actually probably doing. And again, these tracks were in late February, early March, which is the mating season. So in fact, what probably happened was that the male fisher first went here, left his scent. Remember, we mentioned there are some glands in the paws of the fisher that leave a scent. And then the female fisher came around, smelled the scent from the paws of the male fisher. Fisher scat is often has pointed ends. It's twisted and has these tapered ends. It very likely will have some bones in it or fur because of what the fishers are eating. And it's often confused with fox scat because fox scat also has lots of bones and fur in it. And once again, similar to what we saw with the weasels, fishers tend to leave their scats on elevated surfaces like stumps, logs, and rocks. This is a weasel trait, leaving scat in these locations. And if you saw porcupine quills in scat, that would be almost pathognomonic of fisher scat. So again, I highly recommend that you go to the National Park Service workshops. They have a YouTube channel. There's the link. That'll be in the PowerPoint presentation, which will accompany this video on the Eastman web portal. And again, that video on animal tracking by Ed Sharon has great footage of fisher tracks as well as many other animals. And he's able to illustrate from those tracks and the track patterns what fishers are actually doing. And there's one other nice video that shows a fisher leaping across the stream, and there's the URL that you can click on to see that. So that's today's session, all about weasels and fishers. We hope that you've gotten something out of this, and thanks again.